text, Judges, 2nd chapter, verses 6 through 13, but for emphasis' sake, I want to read verses 10 through 13. Again, Judges, 2nd chapter, verses 10 through 13. And it reads, "And also all the generations were gathered unto the fathers, unto their fathers. And there arose another generation after them, who knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served Baal. And they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods, and of the gods of the people who were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. And they forsook the Lord, and served Baal and Ashtaroth." So for a subject, I want to come this morning with, which is it? Have you forgotten, or you just don't know? Which is it? Have you forgotten, or you just don't know? There was this new minister that was hired, and he came into town, and one Sunday he was asked by the elders to teach a class in the absence of their regular school teacher. And so he decided, so I'm going to find out what my young men know. So he asked the question, who knocked down the walls of Jericho? A pause went by, nobody answered. So the preacher said, you mean to tell me no one in this room knows who knocked down the walls of Jericho? So the preacher just stood there, and he went on with the prescribed lesson, but his mind was perplexed because these young men didn't know. Well, they had the Wednesday night meeting before Bible study was there, and the deacons and the elders were both there, and he began to tell them about what he had just experienced that Sunday. He said, now none of them boys knew who knocked down the walls of Jericho. So the entire group of gentlemen, brothers, were sitting there, and none of them said anything. So he said, that doesn't concern you? So finally one of the older brothers stood up and said, preach, it seems that this is really, really bothering you. But what I want to tell you is I've been knowing these boys since they were in their mother's womb. They're some good boys. And what I'm going to tell you is, if they said they don't know who knocked down the walls of Jericho, I believe them. Let's just take some money out of the building fund, send it to find out who's going to repair it, fix the walls, and let it be done. I'm glad one or two of y'all got that. And all the brothers said, I agree. Good. My brothers and sisters, the point of this is to say, which is it? Have you forgotten, or is it that you just don't know? They had an intellectual knowledge of God. There's a lot of people who know intellectually who God is, but they don't know him personally. So for us who are reading the text and we standing on the outside looking in, when I first saw it, I was like, well, how in the world could these folk not know who God was? How could they forget about the God whom their grandparents and great-grandparents crossed over the Red Sea? Stories about how God delivered them. How could they forget about God and forget about what God had done for their parents and their grandparents? Well, I believe it's the same way, and the same generation after us have forgotten about God. It's because there's a reason, might as well say it. What they were experiencing back then is nothing that we're not experiencing today. I believe that the reason why that the next generation here that we read about, and the same generation that's after us, didn't know God personally and forgot about God, is because of their parents' fault. It's their parents, and might as well say their grandparents' fault as well, because they didn't properly inform them of who God was. I can read run, spot, run, jump, Johnny, jump. But if you don't explain why Spot running or why Johnny's jumping, it's just a story. So, matter of fact, 2 Timothy 2 Timothy 1st chapter, verse number 5. 2 Timothy 1st chapter, verse number 5. This is why I came to this conclusion. Y'all remember the story about this dude named Timothy? Paul said, when I call to remembrance the unfeigned or the genuine faith that is in you. Well, Paul, why are you telling Timothy that I believe you got some genuine faith? Because it first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. Therefore, I'm persuaded that it's in you all. Say this. In light of this year's elections, we have our community elections, the district election, school boards, and the mayor's race. Y'all know about that, right? Next week. Then we have, later on, the House of Representatives. We have the U.S. Senate, the Supreme Court, Alabama Supreme Court, and we have our local and state judges all this year. And then, of course, you know the last one, which is the President of the United States. We're going to have that. Now, here's the thing. Now, notice I just mentioned that we have a generation that knew not the Lord, but the generation before did know that. And I said the reason why they didn't know is because the generation before them didn't make it personal. So, I want you to know that we have a generation of children right now who do not and will not vote. That's the point I'm trying to make. We have a generation of children that will not vote. I was told by a few kids, well I said kids, I don't call them that, old as I am, they are children, that they didn't believe that their vote counted or it didn't make a difference. I kind of understood that. I disagreed with it, but I understood it. Then there was another group that told me that they believe that the system's already rigged, it's already set up to who's going to be the next person that's going to be whatever they're going to be anyway. I kind of get that. Then I was told a few that they didn't see any reason to vote because they never saw their parents vote. So why should they vote? My mom and them and my dad didn't ever vote. I never heard them vote. They never came home and said anything, so why should I vote? So then in my mind I'm asking, well now y'all know me, I asked them, have you forgotten the reason why you can vote? Or you just don't know? Think about the question I just asked. Do our children, have they really just forgotten what our generation and the generation before us went through to vote? Or is it that they just don't know? Now, remember we talked about this, people don't know who God is and don't have a relationship with God. Whose fault is it? The principle still hasn't changed. It's our fault if our children don't know what happened and what gave them the reason to vote. So I'm asking one kid, I said, wait a minute, so hold on, wait. So you mean to tell me you're not voting? So do you not understand, you don't know? The kid was like, what are you talking about? You talking about voting? I was like, yeah, what do you think I'm talking about? Man, please, bro, don't even talk about that, man. They ain't used to voting. And I'm just sitting there thinking what I want to do is hit him in his throat. Because I'm thinking, first of all, it was disrespectful. But then second, it's like, you just have no clue. So then I thought about it. These kids have no clue what I was referring to. So here's why. You'll understand the reason why I went to Judges 10 chapter verse number 13, because Hosea 4th chapter verse number 6. Anybody remember what that says? Hosea 4th chapter verse number 6, the very first line says, my people are destroyed by what?
Lack of knowledge.
So if we don't let them know they're going down a path that they will end up repeating. So I'm inclined to believe that the next generation does not know intellectually, emotionally, or culturally, or historically the struggles, the pain, the sorrow, the sweat, the tears, the marching, the violence, and the death that occurred. So our parents and our generation have the right to vote without the fear of voting also. But our children don't even know that. Many of our children don't know that until the Civil Rights Movement, 1960s, blacks were technically denied the right to vote. Now they could vote, but they had stipulations that black folk could not could not meet. So they were technically denied the right to vote. And so if they were given, actually, they fit all the bill, the right to vote, our children don't know how they were intimidated, how they were threatened, you better not go vote. They incurred violence if they were caught at the polls and voted anyway. Now I know it's not, what's February, Black History Month, but it's irrelevant. Because right now we're at a relevant state in our lives where people, our young generation, don't realize that they have a mouth to say, a vote to cast. But because they don't know the struggle that our people had to go through in order to get the right, they just look at it all nonchalant like it doesn't make a difference. So because of their lack of knowledge, the next generation has become neither for voting or against voting. They become lukewarm, indifferent, whatever. The man already got it set up. You keep believing the man. That's just like, they'll believe in the man, but they won't believe in Satan. Let me move on. They become indifferent and uninterested in voting because of their lack of knowledge of their own ethnic history and their culture. Now, be honest, I know when somebody said it, they said, well, that's why I send my children to school, so they can learn history. Now, I'm sure that would be something I would think. That's why I send my children to school, so they can learn about their history. But let me ask you a question. How many of us have picked up our children's or our grandchildren's history books? Honestly, can you say you picked up your children or your grandchildren's history books and read the part where it talks about civil rights or slavery? You would be astonished at how whitewashed. I should have got a picture of it. But a friend of mine actually has a book, History, and it makes slavery look like it was a good thing. I promise you. And I'm thinking, now you know we're talking about Alabama, right? Because you know I ain't went out of state to look at it. We're talking about Alabama history books that's basically whitewashing it, talking about how they were given certain foods, and if they wanted something sweet, they could just easily go get some sugar cane. Really? Now they ain't told you how the jokers had to go out there until out there in the hot sun. They said they were fed regularly. And then Tim Anderson, I remember Tim out there brought up, just when I was like, no, I'm not gonna do this lesson, he goes on Facebook live and starts talking about the same thing. So this is his children's book, and she might be second, third grade, but it talked about how the master's wife sold all the clothes for the slaves. So they all had something to wear. If we don't inform our children and our grandchildren why it's an honor and a privilege to vote, they'll never take it seriously. Our parents got beat. They were killed. They were hung. Matter of fact, let me go a little bit deeper. We'll be done with this. Our children, if we don't tell them about our history, about what we had to go through, our children will never know how the dogs were released on our people for protesting equal rights. They'll never know. What you mean? Up in Birmingham, son. What you mean? Go Google dogs, blacks, 1960, Birmingham. Just put in that order. Doesn't make a difference. There's that clip where they sick, peaceful protest, but they sick dogs on people. Yes, sir. But unless you tell them, they'll never know. Our children will never know about the people who were hosed down by a fire hydrant for protesting equal rights. Unless you tell them. Because I realized I never told my son that. Never told him about that because I thought it would be written in the books. What was I thinking? Our children would never know about our people who were beaten, put in jail. Some were murdered by firing squad, some were hung, some were burned, and some were stabbed to death for protesting for equal rights. Matter of fact, Sister Ida mentioned something to me, since I'm going to bring it up. Our children would never know how people had to witness or have in their yard a burning cross. That's that stuff you see on TV. If you do, it's not going to be in the history books. They're not going to put it in there. Because if you whitewash, how the world has become. Let me water down things that were really happening. They said the Holocaust didn't really happen. But you got people with markings and everything else. Matter of fact, can I drop this off? There's a guy by the name of William and another guy by the name of Charles who lived in Virginia. They had this system of causing, what's it called? Judge, jury, and execution by hanging without a jury. So which means if they felt somebody was guilty or somebody did something wrong, they did this particular thing and they called it lynching. Named after the lynch. So we have to remind our children, you have a right to vote. Your people died for the right for you to vote. People who have done wrong for you to have the right to vote. So in my opinion, you don't have a right not to vote. If you have not been in prison where your rights to vote have been taken away, you should vote. And as parents, we need to tell our children, I don't care in our mayor's race, which is a little dirty. It's a little dirty. But it's funny to me because all I'm like is somebody get out there and vote. If you don't like the way things are, vote. Don't let somebody tell you it's already redone. No. Get out and vote. Because here's the reason why. Let's say one person did win because they're going to tell us how many they won by a few votes. That means they know that their 4 years is in jeopardy if they only won by a few votes. So it means they got to straighten up. But let's say if you get a new person in there. In 4 years, you don't do right, you gone. If you start making people accountable for what they got to do, they might actually act right. But it'll never happen if we don't teach our children to vote. Because there are going to be things that are never going to be written in the books that's going to be watered down, and the next generation will never be able to vote for it. Now, you have to ask yourself, I should be wrong, but I'm going to say it's saying, somebody told me, here's the decision you got to make. Do I vote for Satan for the presidency, or do I vote for the devil? That's what I was told. I just started laughing. I said, bro, I don't know what to tell you. Well, I was like, oh, Lord. I had never heard nothing like that. Do I vote for Satan or the devil? They're the same thing. But they're trying to tell you that's the decision they have to make up there. But I said, don't use that excuse